Technology and Livelihood Education, Cookery 10, Quarter 4, Preparing and Cooking Meat, Week 1. Meat is a term for the flesh of cattle, beef and veal, sheep or lamb and pig and pork. Meat comprises water, protein, fat, and various amounts of minerals and vitamins. Beef is divided into large sections called primal cuts. These beef primal cuts or primal are then broken down further into individual steak and other retail cuts. A side of a beef is literally one side of the beef carcass that is split through the backbone. Each side is then halved between the 12th and 13th ribs into sections called the forequarter and hindquarter. Beef is very popular and is used across the globe. This meat is obtained from cow and is one of the much sought-after types of red meat. Pork is divided into large sections called primal cuts. These primal cuts are then broken down further into individual retail cuts. Pork is another choice. As far as meat types are concerned, pork is derived from pig and is classified as red meat. However, this meat is less fatty than beef. Sheep meat is also a staple food in some parts of the world and is consumed in many regions. Sheep meat is otherwise known as mutton for the mature sheep, or lamb for immature sheep. It is also classified as red meat. The composition of the meat. The composition of meat. The first composition of meat is the water. 70% of its muscle tissue is water. The following are the water content of meat and poultry. The second composition of meat is the protein. 20% of its muscle tissue is protein. The protein coagulates when it is heated. It becomes firmer and loses moisture. When protein has coagulated to the desired degree, the meat is said to be done. The third composition of meat is the fat. 5% of its muscle tissue is fat. The fat in meat contributes to letter A juiciness. Marbling is fat that is deposited with the muscle tissue. Surface fats protect the meat from drying out during cooking. Adding surface fat is called barding. Letter B is tenderness. Marbling separates muscle fibers, making meat easier to chew. And letter C flavor. The fat is the main source of flavor in meat. The fourth composition of meat is the carbohydrates. It plays necessary part in the complex reaction called maillard reaction, which takes place when meats are browned, by roasting, broiling, or sautéing. Without carbohydrates, desirable flavor and appearance of browned meats would not be achieved. The structure of meat. The first structure of the meat is the muscle fibers. Lean meat is composed of long, thin muscle fibers bound together in bundles. These determine the texture or grain of a piece of meat. Fine, grained meat is composed of small fibers. Coarse, textured meat has large fibers. The second structure of the meat is the connective tissue. These are network of proteins that bind the muscle fibers together. Connective tissue is tough. Meats are high in connective tissue if the muscles are more exercised, like meat from legs, and the meat comes from older animals. There are two kinds of connective tissue. First, is the collagen. White connective tissue that dissolves or breaks down by long, slow cooking with liquid. Moist heat cooking methods at low temperature are not effective for turning a meat high in connective tissues into a tender, juicy, finished product. Acid helps dissolve collagen. The second kind of connective tissue is the elastin. Yellow connective tissue and is not broken down in cooking. Tenderizing can be accomplished only by removing the elastin, by pounding and by slicing and grinding. The basic preparation method of meat. The first basic preparation methods of meat is Number 1. Washing. Generally, the only occasion in which you will have to wash meat is when it comes into contact with blood during preparation. After washing, dry the food thoroughly with absorbent kitchen paper. The second preparation method is the skinning. Most of the meat you dealt with has been already skinned by the supplier. Number 3. Dicing. The meat are diced when it is cut into cubes for various types of casseroles, steams, curries, and dishes such as steak, kidney pie and pudding. Number 4 is the trimming. The following are the reasons for performing trimming. Number 1. To improve the appearance of the cut or joint. Number 2. Leave as much of the meat intact as possible. Number 3. Leave an even thickness of fat. How much fat you trim off will depend on the type of meat preference and the cooking process to be used. And number 4. Remove as much gristle and sinews as possible. Number 5 is the slicing. Slicing is the cutting of meat by determining the direction of the grain or the muscle fibers and cut across the grain. This is particularly important with tougher cuts such as steak, in which the grain is also quite obvious. You slice meat with the grain instead of against the grain. Number 6 is the seasoning. It is the addition of salt and white or black pepper to improve the flavor of food. Letter A. Use white pepper or cayenne pepper on food which you want to keep attractive with white color. Letter B. Add salt to roast and grill after the meat has browned. Adding salt before cooking will extract the juices of the meat to the surface and slows down the browning reactions. This needs high temperature and dry heat. Number 7 is the coating. The two basic coatings are: Number 1. The flour. Coat the meat before cooking. Otherwise, the flour becomes sticky and unpleasant. Number 2. Bread crumbs. Coat the meat in flour. Then egg wash. The egg wash is made of lightly beaten whole egg with a little water or milk. And finally, with the bread crumbs. Different kinds of meat and its source. Number 1 is the pork. The pork meat is from domesticated pigs, typically high in fat. Commonly slaughtered 1 year or less of age to ensure tender cuts. Number 2 is the beef. The meat of the beef is from cattle over 1 year old. Number 3 is the raw beef. It is the meat from the carabao. Number 4 is the lamb. Meats of domesticated sheep. Its texture is a direct result of what it consumes and the age at which it is slaughtered. Number 5 is the chevin. It is a meat from deer or goat. Number 6 is the veal. It is the flesh of young calf, about 4 to 5 months old. Because of its age, it is considered by some to be the finest meat.
A time to remember. This is Maylene Huliganga. Thank you for watching.